If EA Studio is generating hundreds of strategies and most of them die later, your problem probably isn't the generator. It's your acceptance criteria, or the fact you don't really have any. I'm Shane, and this is my Beyond Backtests AI avatar. In this video, I'll show you the exact acceptance criteria I use in EA Studio, and why they save me from wasting hours on junk EAs. In EA Studio, acceptance criteria are basically your first gate. The generator will happily spit out thousands of strategies. Most of them are noise. If you don't tell EA Studio what good enough looks like, you end up eyeballing equity curves, getting emotionally attached to pretty lines, and then wondering why they blow up in forward tests. Acceptance criteria fix that. You're saying, unless you hit these minimum stats on the backtest, in sample and out of sample, don't even bother showing up. Let's start with the full backtest part. This is the overall sanity check on the whole period you're testing. My baseline looks like this. Complete backtest, yes. Minimum profit factor, 1.2. Minimum R squared, 60. Minimum win-loss ratio, 0.4. Minimum return drawdown, 3. Minimum count of trades, 100. What does that actually mean? Profit factor 1.2 plus. I don't need crazy numbers, but I do want more than break even with commissions. 1.2 is a realistic floor, not a dream. R squared 60 plus. This is about the shape of the equity curve. I don't want a random zigzag that just happens to end slightly up. I want a reasonably smooth trend. Win-loss ratio 0.4 plus. I'm okay with more losers than winners, but not a total bloodbath. Anything below 0.4 is usually too skewed and fragile. Return drawdown 3 plus. For every unit of drawdown, I want at least 3 units of return. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be worth the risk. That's the global picture. Now let's talk about in-sample and out-of-sample, because this is where a lot of people go wrong. In EA Studio, I split the data into in-sample training, where the strategy is optimized, out-of-sample trading, unseen data that simulates the future. For the in-sample part, I keep the same style of rules. Minimum R squared, 60. Minimum profit factor, 1.2. Minimum return drawdown, 3. Minimum win-loss ratio, 0.4. Why? Because if the strategy only looks okay on the whole backtest, but the training chunk itself is messy or barely profitable, that's a red flag. For the out-of-sample part, I simplify it even more. Minimum win-loss ratio, 0.4. Minimum profit factor, same ballpark, for example 1.1 to 1.2, depending on how strict you want to be. I'm not expecting perfection on OOS. It's supposed to be harder. But I do expect the strategy to not completely collapse when it sees new data. If it can't meet even modest stats out of sample, I don't care how pretty the in-sample curve is. It fails the gate. All of this also depends on time frame and trade frequency. For example, on M1 scalpers, 100 trades can happen fast. 3 to 12 months of data might be enough. On M5 strategies, I might want 12 months to 3 years. On M15 and higher, I'm happier with 3 to 5 years of history because trades are fewer. The point is, your minimum 100 trades rule shouldn't be fighting the reality of the time frame. And then there's the other trap, being too strict. If you push these numbers too high, PF 2.0 plus, R squared 90 plus, huge return/DD, you might feel clever, but you'll often end up with almost no EAs generated, or only curve-fitted freaks that accidentally hit those extreme stats. Acceptance criteria are a coarse filter, not a guarantee of robustness. You're just saying, don't show me total garbage. Show me things that are statistically interesting enough to test further. 3 common mistakes I see with acceptance criteria. 1. No criteria at all. Just eyeballing curves and picking what looks nice. That's how you end up emotionally attached to curve-fit trash. 2. Only caring about profit factor PF 3.0 on 20 trades with a horrible equity curve is not impressive. PF without R squared, drawdown, and trade count is half the story. 3. Over-tightening everything. Setting crazy high filters, then complaining EA Studio never finds anything good. You've essentially told it, only give me unicorns, and then wonder why nothing survives. Acceptance criteria should be realistic and modest, strong enough to filter junk, gentle enough to let potential survivors reach WFO and Monte Carlo. Remember the bigger picture from the first video. Acceptance criteria are just checkpoint 1 in the pipeline. We generate strategies in EA Studio and apply these rules to kill obvious junk before we spend any more time on them. The survivors move on to walk-forward optimization, where we see if they can handle unseen data instead of just memorizing the past. If they pass WFO, we then normalize the strategy, cleaning up fragile parameters and unnecessary complexity without killing the edge. Next is Monte Carlo testing, where we shake the strategy with randomized trade orders, slippage, and costs to see how often it still behaves acceptably. If you want these settings written down, plus the rest of the workflow laid out step by step, I've put everything into a PDF called The Algo Trader's Blueprint, Beyond Pretty Backtests. It covers the exact EA Studio acceptance criteria we've just gone through, how I set up walk-forward optimization with 50% out of sample and segments, how I do normalization and Monte Carlo without over-sanitizing the strategy, and how I run live demo testing before anything touches real size. You'll find the link in the description. In the next video, we'll dig into walk-forward optimization in EA Studio, how I actually configure it, and how I decide what passes and what gets binned. Stay beyond backtests, and I'll see you in the next one.